Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, January 12th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 234 days, the game against Michigan in 319 days. As Ohio State enters the home stretch of the 2022 recruiting class, we're going to take a little look ahead today at some names you might need to know for future classes. My guest is Buckeyes Group recruiting analyst Bill Greene. He just spent time down in South Florida checking out some of the best players in that region. He's in fact still down there right now, which is why he's joining me on the phone. And you're not actually going to get to see his smiling face. But Bill, thank you for joining me.
Hey, glad to be here, Tom. How are you?
Good. I saw you were down there, and I thought, oh, that's fun. I was just down there last year. You were watching tryouts for the South Florida Express 7-on-7 team, and if that name sounds familiar, Mark and Tony and I got to see, I think, this exact tryout last year when we were down there for the national championship game. But for people who don't know, can you explain what the South Florida Express is?
Yeah, I mean, 7-on-7 football in Florida is gigantic. I mean, 7-on-7 is just what it says. No, you don't have the five linemen and you're not tackling. But man, the passing game it's how these guys are sharpening their skills. Cedric Hawkins drove 2 hours and 45 minutes to go through a 7-on-7 practice, 2 hours and 45 minutes one way, and then had to drive back home. He's honing his coverage skills there. The receivers are learning how to get open against man-to-man coverage. The quarterbacks are learning how to fit the ball into tight windows. So 7-on-7 is gigantic down here. All the top players play. It starts now, and it'll run probably until 2-a-days start down here, or not exactly 2 days, but they have spring football down here. So it runs right up to spring football, and then it'll pick back up again and run almost into June. And there's national tournaments. These guys go to Vegas, they go to Texas, they go all over the place. And when they go to these tournaments, they'll stop at 2 or 3 colleges that are in the area and take their visits. So it's pretty structured. It's huge. All the top players play. And South Florida Express kind of set the tone maybe 15 years ago. And when they really just got together to play 7-on-7, that was what they were doing, just for a way for the kids to, and then another team started up and another team, and then other states did it. Not Ohio, by the way, not allowed in Ohio, with their 1922 rules, but it's just gigantic in Florida. All the top players play, and these kids, they play it like it's a national championship game. It's not fun and games. You try to make these teams. 200 kids tried out for the South Florida Express. They'll keep 24. And there's probably 10 other teams in Florida, maybe more than that, that are just on the same level. So, South Florida Express, you're talking Teddy Bridgewater, Jeremy Cass, Ryan Shazier, Jamal Berry. The list goes on and on of names Ohio State guys would remember.
Yeah, Ohio State has pulled a lot of talent out of South Florida over the years, and a
Yes.
lot of those guys were South Florida Express guys. You mentioned Cedric Hawkins earlier, making a long ride to go to that practice. He was, if the name sounds familiar, he was the guy who committed to Ohio State, kind of out of the blue in the middle of the
Yeah.
Rose Bowl.
Right.
You got to see him in person. What did you think of him?
I like him a lot better now. We saw him last summer. He was up at Ohio State for camp. We saw him. He was with the same group of South Florida Express kids, J.J. Smith, Brandon Ennis, JoJo Trader, and that group. And I liked him, but I didn't really love him. He was like 5'11", maybe 165 last June. Well, they offered him after camp. They liked him, and I saw him again this week, and he is now 6'1" and 185, but he's still just as fast and just as athletic. And that made a world of difference to me in terms of evaluating him. He is a safety, but I could see him. I see a little Proctor in him. If you watch his high school film, he made 120 tackles as a junior, so he'll come up and hit. He can cover, and that's what 7-on-7 really, it either shows you can cover or it exposes that you cannot cover. So you're going one-on-one with J.J. Smith and Brandon Ennis. You either can cover or you can't. Well, we can see that he can cover. So I could see him, playing that slot role too. So I could also see him as a Ronnie Hawkins or I'm blanking on the name.
Ronnie Hickman.
Ronnie Hickman type. I've been in Florida too long.
Yeah,
I can see him as a Ronnie Hickman type. So I think he could fit all three of those safety spots that Ohio State likes to employ. So, long story short, Cedric Hawkins, I like him a lot better today now that he's gotten a little bigger and stronger, and he kept his speed and his athleticism. I thought he was a little small. We saw him in June, but he hit a spurt, and he's a heck of a player.
You mentioned 2024 wide receiver J.J. Smith there briefly. I want to hear a little bit more about him, and maybe another name or two that people should know that are names they might not know yet, but that if you were following Ohio State recruiting in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, that are names that people are going to need to know for the future.
Yeah, J.J. Smith is a wide receiver. He is currently a sophomore in high school, 2024. So ways to go with this kid. And, Georgia's all over him. Hartline is all over him. He's going to have offers from everybody. My guess is he will be either the top receiver in the 2024 class or right near the top. I think he's a 5-star kid. If I had to make a comparison today, he's like 6'3", 185, 190, but you can see that frame is going to fill out. And he can run. So I would say possibly a Marvin. He would be more of a Marvin Harrison type kid down the road than he would be an Olave or a Jackson Smith-Njigba. Just a big, physical, fast receiver, great hands, body control, everything. He's Hartline doesn't go after those 3-star projects. This fits with what Brian Hartline goes after and what he gets. And right now, Ohio State is in tremendous shape. With J.J. Smith. His uncle is Geno Smith Sr., who I featured on a couple videos, one of my Florida insiders. J.J.'s cousin would be Seattle quarterback Geno Smith Jr., who's in the NFL. The dad loves Hartline. The kid loves Hartline. He has been up to Ohio State for camp last year, loved everything about the city, the campus. He will be back again this summer. So you just got to fight for him. And Hartline wins these battles. He wins them. So I think they're in great shape with J.J. Smith. But as a 2024 kid, we got a way to go on this one.
Yeah, you mentioned Geno Smith and Ricky Williams being your two guys who are the coaches of the South Florida Express. And those are your two guys down there. And, if people remember last summer when they were up in Columbus, we did a video with them, a wildly popular interview with them because they are They don't hide their feelings on stuff. It's pretty unvarnished. They will give you the plain truth, whether it is good or bad or indifferent. And you did another interview with them on camera that's on our YouTube channel. That was also a fantastic interview. They talked about Brian Hartline kind of being the face of the Ohio State program down in Florida. Like, what does that mean to you when they tell you something like that?
Yeah, well, these guys, they're so involved in recruiting, and they've been so involved in recruiting for 15 years. Ryan Day cannot be everywhere, at every time. And rules for head coaches in terms of traveling are a lot stricter than what they are for the assistant coaches. So they see Hartline more than they see Ryan Day. They talk to Hartline more than they talk to Ryan Day. So that's their connection to Ohio State is Ryan Day. And I would also say that up in the northern part of Florida, it would be Tony Alford. Tony was really the main recruiter on Cedric Hawkins. So those are the two. And I think if I did an interview with some guys up in Orlando, they would talk about Tony Alford the same way. But Hartline is the South Florida guy. There's also the familiarity aspect that Brian played for the Dolphins. So they maybe they didn't know him personally, but they know the name recognition. They know the guy played in the NFL, played in the Dolphins, was a Miami guy for a while. And Brian is such a great recruiter, worked so hard at it that he's made an impression on these guys. When they call him the face of the program, I mean, that speaks volumes to how South Florida views Brian Hartline.
Ohio State has kind of made its hay over the years going into areas where the local team is not, maybe a little bit down. So when Georgia was kind of a little trending downward during the end of the Mark Richt era, they went into Georgia and they got Raekwon McMillan and Trey Johnson and guys like that. When Texas was a little bit down, kind of into Charlie Strong era, they go in and they get Jeff Okudah, they get J.K. Dobbins, they get Garrett Wilson, guys like that. They have, Florida has been down. Basically, the entire state of Florida has been down for a while now. Miami has been like way down in South Florida. With Mario Cristobal coming in now, native son, guy who's a real head, real honest to goodness head coach, and not Manny Diaz, who was kind of learning on the job a little bit the last few years. Do you have a sense, is it going to start getting harder for Ohio State to pull talent out of South Florida, with Miami maybe on the upswing in the next couple of years?
Possibly. The one thing Miami has, and they hired Cristobal, but behind the scenes, they had to pay Cristobal, which they haven't been willing to do. That's why they had to get Manny Diaz and Al Golden, and they got Mark Richt at the end of his career after he got fired. Well, there's money there now. They rounded up some very wealthy people in Miami. John Ruiz, Marcus Lemonis. I mean, the names are out there on the internet, and they're doing what they have to do. So to pay Mario, they paid him a lot more than what they paid the other coaches. They had to pay Mario's buyout to Oregon, which was substantial, and they've not been willing to do that in the past. They had to commit a ton of money to Mario's assistant coaching pool, which they have not been willing to do for a while. They're talking about building an on-campus facility now, which I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know where the land will be, but they're talking. So they're, the wheels are turning in Miami right now, where they've been pretty stagnant, since the Jimmy Johnson, Butch Davis days. And the problem is, when these kids leave Miami, and the Miami facilities are the worst in the country. I mean, it's almost like a high school weight room. And then they go to Alabama and they see that they have a chef and they have the indoor whirlpool and the stuff that they have, that Ohio State has, that Georgia has. It doesn't compare in Miami, and that's still going to be tough. I mean, Mario's going to be great. They actually also stole the athletic director from Clemson, which they paid a ton of money for him too. So they're pumping money into this Miami football program right now. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as it's been going against Al Golden or Manny Diaz. But I still think Ohio State, Georgia, Bama are going to have advantages over Miami when you're recruiting those kids. When those kids leave this area and they see the shiny new toys that you see at the top of the chart and compare them to the bottom of the chart, what Miami has, it still looks really good for these kids to leave the area.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about how old, we're talking about a 2024 kid. I don't know how far back he can remember. He might not remember the Randy Shannon era at Miami. I mean, this is
right.
Yeah, the days of the U and Michael Irvin and 7 miles of penalties in the Cotton Bowl against Texas. Like that's all like ancient history. That's stuff that they might, it's passed down like legends in an ancient society or something like that. There's not a lot of memories of actual competent Miami football in the memories of South Florida recruits. So yeah, it may take a little while, but like as you said, they are investing significantly in that program all of a sudden, which could eventually be a little bit of a game changer. Before I let you go, I wanted to get your thoughts on the national title game, because Georgia broke a couple of rules that sure seemed like just completely immutable truths before Monday night. They won without an elite quarterback. They did it by scoring exactly 2 touchdowns on offense. I mean, no, they really didn't have an elite offense at all. Does any of that change your mind about what it takes to be a national champion in this era? Or do you kind of chalk that up to, well, Alabama lost its top 2 wide receivers and that Georgia defense is, I mean, like a complete historical outlier and not something that other teams can replicate?
Yeah, we're not going to know until we look back in the next 4 or 5 years. The game changes. The game changes every decade, it seems like. There was a time when Urban Meyer was looked at as a revolutionary with his offense, the Tim Tebow offense, the Alex Smith offense, how it evolved. Now that offense is looked at as, something John Heisman did back in 1919. The game changes. Now, I will say that we've had 8 years of the 14 playoffs, and the rules that we always talk about, you got to score 35-40 in each game to win. You got to have the top quarterback. The only time in the past 7 years that this didn't apply was when it was Bama and Georgia a few years ago, when Tua had to come off the bench to rescue Jalen Hurts. And I think that was a case of just familiarity between those two teams. They had just played a month before. So they knew each other so well. So maybe that's what we saw again last night. Maybe the rules don't apply when two teams who know each other so well, who just played weeks ago, maybe that's where we throw the rules out the window, but maybe the game is changing also, and we're going to find out in the next couple of years. I will say that, this Bama team is, out of Saban's 15, 16 years there, this would be team 12 or 13. This is not typical Bama. This is a total rebuilding year where any other coach goes 9-3 with this team, but it's Nick. So Nick's got the lead in the championship game in the fourth quarter with a total rebuilding team with tons of injuries. One of the youngest, I think it was the youngest team in the country, returned the least production of anyone, and he's got the lead in the fourth quarter of the championship game. So don't feel sorry for Nick. Nick will be back with a vengeance next year, but we got to see if the game is going to change to get more toward back to defense. I mean, these coaches are so smart. They always get ahead of the curve, and it's the coaching that forces these changes. So maybe they're figuring out these bombs away offenses now. We saw Michigan defeat Ohio State with, an old defense, rugged style, beat the passing team. So we're going to see. I don't know where we're going here. But it's interesting to see if this is the start of a change or if it's an aberration because it was two teams that knew each other so well playing.
Yeah, I mean, they always say it's hard to beat a team twice, and
it is.
You look at the army of analysts that both Georgia and Alabama have, and they set to work after that first game, I'm guessing, to figure out, okay, they know what we know, what they know that we know, and how we're going to defend this and how we're going to attack this, and that was quite a chess match on Monday night. That was not the most entertaining football game for about 3 quarters or so, but ended up with a pretty fun fourth quarter, and there was some hitting in that game. That was a pretty physical game.
Yeah, for me watching that game, I would love to know Ryan Day's take on that game. I thought that game showed a significant gap between Ohio State and Georgia, and maybe Ryan Day has noticed it because he sure made a lot of changes, and I think there's more changes coming to this Ohio State coaching staff. So I wonder, if Ryan Day looked at his team, the makeup of his team, not so much talent, but just how they're schematically designed. And I wonder if he looked and said, we've got to change, because he's sure making changes. And I think there's a gap between Alabama and Georgia, not so much talent, but just in the overall construction of those teams.
Yeah, it is. I think Ryan Day. This is probably going to be the most important or impactful offseason of the Ryan Day era, where this is going to go one of two ways, and he has the opportunity to maybe change the direction of the Ohio State football program a little bit. And they had a pretty good season this year, but yes. We're definitely did not look quite like the Georgia defense did or the Alabama defense did. So yeah, this is going to be a very interesting offseason, because we've seen transfer portal impact teams, we've seen coaching changes impact teams. We're going to see a new schematic look for the Buckeyes this year. So it is going to be quite an offseason. So there should be plenty to talk about over the next 234 days. So there will be plenty to talk about on all of those fronts, and I'm sure we'll have additional news a little later on this week on potentially coaches and NFL draft decisions and all that kind of fun stuff. And you can find all of that, as well as all of Bill's great coverage from down in South Florida, at BuckeyeScoop.com. He has been very active on our Ask the Insiders board this week. Lots of interesting insights on different players, and the interview with the South Florida Express coaches, and so much more. You can find that all at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can also find all of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. And finally, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Do make sure you check out that interview with those South Florida Express coaches. It's I think it's labeled Bill's South Florida Insiders or something like that. It is a great video, and those guys, again, it is the unvarnished truth. So if you like the unvarnished truth and not a lot of BS, it is a great watch. So check that one out as well. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.